I am willing to bet that not many of you right now know where I am located on this Google Earth. You can take a guess, but I'm pretty sure that nobody is going to guess that I am actually right now in a Ford. Fjord, not Ford. I am in a Ford in the middle of Norway. Alright, and a Ford is one of the first terms that you need to understand for this unit. A Ford is a U-shaped valley caused by glaciers that connect to the sea and fill with seawater after glaciers melt. So if I zoom out, you can see that I was in fact in Norway, right next to Sweden, and if we zoom back into that spot, you can see this big crack in the earth that was at one time filled with glaciers. Okay, but since then, it has been filled in with seawater. Okay, because the glacier melted and it's filled in with seawater. Alright, and that's one of the first terms that you need to understand in this video is what a Ford is. And the reason that we're looking at Fords today is because we are on a new unit. Okay, we are on Unit 4, Chapter 12 specifically, and we are talking about Europe. So let's zoom out so you can see all of wonderful Europe. Okay, a Ford is one of those things that you're going to find up in Norway and Sweden. Those things started by glaciers, eventually melted and filled with seawater. And the reason I was focusing at the beginning on Norway and Sweden is because it is a peninsula. And we're going to be talking a little bit about peninsulas as I start this video. If you do not know, okay, a peninsula is a piece of land that projects out into a body of water. So if we look, something that might surprise you is that all of Europe that we're going to discuss is a peninsula. Okay, it extends west out of Asia, okay, and it makes a peninsula because it's surrounded by water, but it's still connected to land. And we actually call or nickname Europe a peninsula of peninsulas because it is a giant peninsula, but there's a lot of smaller ones that jet off of it, and we're specifically going to look at 5 of these. Okay, and I'm going to hand out a map, or you should have one right now, that you can label some of these peninsulas as we go. Not only are we going to talk about peninsulas in this video, we're also going to talk about mountains, uplands, rivers, plains, and islands. We're going to go through them pretty quickly. I'll put something online so you can figure out the countries and their capitals, another important part of physical geography. But to start today, we're going to focus on those things. Like I said, the peninsulas, mountains, rivers, uplands, plains, and islands of Europe. Alright, so we looked at all of Europe as one giant peninsula. So let's specifically look at the 5 smaller peninsulas. We already showed you where the Fords were, okay, up in Norway and Sweden. Well, now what we are going to do is we are going to look at Norway and Sweden as peninsula. And if we zoom in on it, you will see it is in fact a peninsula. And what we call this peninsula that Norway and Sweden make up is the Scandinavian Peninsula. Okay, so that's the first of the 5 peninsulas we're going to look at is the Scandinavian Peninsula. If we zoom out, we can look at a smaller peninsula called the Jutland Peninsula. Okay, not far from the Scandinavian Peninsula, the Jutland Peninsula, which you should be labeling, is included with Denmark and kind of the northern tip of Germany. Okay, so right here we have our Jutland just south of the Scandinavian. So that's the second of our 5 peninsulas that we're going to look at today. The third peninsula is the Iberian Peninsula. Okay, the Iberian Peninsula is made up of Spain and Portugal. Again, we can see that these two jet out from the other parts of the earth, but they are still surrounded basically by water on all sides except for one. Okay, so right here we have our land and then we have water. Okay, and that, like I said, is the Iberian Peninsula. If we zoom out again, this one's probably the easiest one. This one is the Italian Peninsula, and maybe you know already, but we have Italy right here. Okay, if we zoom in, you can see that I'm not lying to you. Italy, and Italy makes a peninsula. You've seen or heard of the boot before because it is in the shape of a boot, but this is a peninsula itself because it's got those 3 sides with water, and we have the land right there. Okay, so we've talked about Scandinavian quickly, the Jutland Peninsula, the Iberian Peninsula, and the Italian Peninsula. The last one we're going to look at is called the Balkan Peninsula. This one isn't as obvious as all the other ones. Those other ones you can clearly see are surrounded by water. Okay, they're kind of skinny, jet off of the land. The Balkan Peninsula is a little bit bigger. Okay, and it takes up most of mainland Europe, it seems like. Our Balkan Peninsula is covered. We go all the way from Romania, which we zoom in so you can see it. Okay, Romania. It goes over to Slovenia, all the way over here, comes down to Greece, and it is in fact covered on three sides by water. If we zoom in, you can see those three water boundaries. Okay, we have the Aegean Sea right here, the Mediterranean Sea, and the Adriatic Sea. Those are the three seas that kind of surround this Balkan Peninsula. Okay, it's a really cool area. Like you've probably heard me say before, this is the only real location that I've ever been. Okay, is in Greece. Way cool place. And in fact, I was on a peninsula. The fifth one we've talked about today, the Balkan. Now that we've talked about the peninsulas, we're going to go into mountains. And there's three main mountain regions that we're going to discuss today. Okay, the first of them being what you probably have heard of before, and it's already highlighted on our map, is the Alps. Okay, the Alp Mountains. And if we zoom in, we click on the Alps, you can see the outline of where the Alps are. Okay, that green outline that pops up on your screen, that is the Alps, and it kind of consists of France, Austria, Bosnia, and Yugoslavia. Okay, those are the different countries, because even though it's outlined there, if we really want to get specific, we can trace the Alps going all the way up, down into Bosnia, okay, and then up back into France, and there is our Alps. Okay, so a little bit different than the green outline we have there. Obviously mine's not going to be perfect, but you can trace the Alps down a little bit, kind of into Yugoslavia, okay, and Bosnia. So that is one of the mountain ranges that we need to look at in Europe. The next mountain range, if we just go down a little bit, is in Italy. Okay, in Italy there's a mountain range called the Apennines Mountains. Okay, and those are just kind of central in Italy. They run right kind of down the center. So you should be labeling this on your map as well. Okay, feel free to pause me at any time if you want to highlight stuff, spell stuff out. Okay, the Apennines Mountains are in Italy as well. Okay, the third and the last mountain range that we're going to talk about is the Balkan Mountains. Okay, the Balkan Mountains are located in Bulgaria. So let's go over a little bit. And the Balkan Mountains would be located roughly right in this area. That's where you're going to find the Balkan Mountains. Okay, so that's a smaller range than the Alps, but it's another important one when looking at Europe and the physical geography of Europe. So we have talked about the mountains in Europe. Now I want to shift your focus to the uplands. Okay, uplands are an awful lot like mountains, but they aren't actually mountains. They're hills or low mountains, and they're different because the altitude isn't as high as mountains, so they're smaller. We still call some of them mountains, but they're not exactly mountains. Alright, and one of the first ones we're going to talk about is the Jurland Mountains. Okay, the Jurland Mountains, if we zoom in, are in Norway. So let's see if we can get close enough to see if it even pops up. I don't know if it will. Yep, it does. Okay, so it's almost all of Norway. When I zoom out, I kind of lose it a little bit, but you can see when I get in, it's close enough that it highlights. When you put your mouse around it, it covers most of Norway. So it's a pretty big range, not high enough to really be classified as a mountain range, but instead it's an upland region, hills or low mountain ranges. Okay, and that's the Jurland Mountains. The name doesn't look like it's spelled, but you can trust me on that. I looked up the pronunciation because I wasn't sure myself, to tell you the truth. Okay, so that is one of our uplands regions, and there's quite a few of them in Europe that we need to look at. The second one are the Scottish Highlands. Okay, so if we go to the Scottish Highlands, we are going to go to the United Kingdom. I'm going to type it in to get a better look at it. Sorry that took a little bit, but it's going to zoom us right down into the Scottish Highlands. Okay, so this is another area that you're going to find highlands. Okay, I'll zoom out so you can see exactly where I'm talking about on the world map. We're going to come back to the UK in a little bit, but that's where you're going to find the Scottish Highlands. Okay, the second of the uplands region. Another one we're going to talk about is a low mountain area in France, and the specific part of France that we're talking about is a place called Brittany. So if we zoom in, you can see it jets out of the side. Okay, right here is where you're going to find Brittany. Okay, and this whole middle region is considered a highland. Okay, and we call it the low mountain areas of Brittany, which is, as you can see if I zoom out, located in France. Okay, so another one of the upland areas. Okay, the Meseta Central Plateau of Spain is another one we want to look at. So hopefully you start to get familiar with your map and where things are. But if we find Spain, okay, we can highlight the center region, which is going to be Meseta. That's another upland region. I'm going to go through these kind of fast. We've already talked about the Alps. Obviously the Alps are going to be a mountain range, and you can see that right there. And if you look, especially where they come into Germany, you see the outline there. I'll outline especially in Germany. And it kind of comes up right there. So you can see that line comes up there. If we look just above that, you can see that there is going to be the base of the mountains right in this area in Germany. This is another highland region, because when you get to the base of the mountain, it's not going to be as high as the mountains themselves, but it is another upland region. And like I said, we call this the central uplands of Germany, right at the base of the Alps. The last one we're going to look at is the Massif Central in France. We've already looked at one in France, but remember we focused specifically on the Brittany area. The Massif Central is kind of right in the center of France, and you can kind of see those little mountain ranges off to the right of it, but this is another upland region, so you can see that it's kind of mountainous in this area. We've talked about already, we've talked about the peninsulas, okay, we've talked about the mountains. Now we're looking at the upland regions, and you can see that there's a lot of higher altitude regions in this area. Next, we are going to quickly discuss rivers, and there's only two rivers that I really want you to focus on in Europe, and the first one is the Danube River, which stretches 1,771 miles from Germany to the Black Sea. Okay, and we're not going to go into super details about these places right now. We'll talk about them more in class, but this video is basically kind of an understanding of where you're going to find stuff. The Danube River kind of starts in Germany, alright? It goes into Austria, past Slovakia, and down through Hungary, okay, down through Serbia, right there, into Bulgaria, kind of up around Romania, and then eventually into the Black Sea. Okay, so that's where you're going to find the Danube River. Again, it stretches 1,771 miles. Okay, that's the Danube River. Okay, there's one other one that we want to look at, and that is the Rhine River. Okay, the Rhine River, you can see we have the North Sea up here, obviously in the north, and we start in the Netherlands. Okay, and this goes from the North Sea into Central Europe, because in the Netherlands we go down through Germany, up kind of on the northern coast of Switzerland, and around it into Switzerland. And that's really the Rhine River. In a nutshell, it runs right into the Alps region. You can see it highlighted, okay, runs into the Alps region. And that's the second of our main rivers. Alright, and I'm just going to zoom out because we're going to go straight from rivers into plains. If you had me last semester, we talked about the Great Plains in the United States and how it's a really good place for agriculture. Okay, this is no different in Europe. Okay, because if we zoom out far enough, kind of spin our globe around, you can see that we're on the same level there as the United States, kind of where our Great Plains region is going to be. Okay, we can just trace that line that's going to go around. It's going to be right in that same area. So you can guess where the plains in Europe are going to be. But if we zoom in, I'll get my green pen out to denote the plains. Okay, we're going to zoom in. These plains, or the northern European plains, make kind of a big curve, and we start that curve in northern France. When I get north here, it's a little easier to see. Okay, we're going to start in northern France. We're going to go up through Belgium. Okay, into the Netherlands. Make sure I get the Netherlands in there. Into Germany and through Poland. Okay, so these kind of make a big curve and show us our Great Plains. Let's zoom out a little bit so you can see that. You get a little bit of Denmark in there as well. Alright, but right here in this curve area is where you find the plains, and it produces a lot of agriculture in this region. Okay, so really so far we've talked about the peninsulas, places that are 3/4 surrounded by water. We've talked about the mountainous regions, the upland regions. Okay, we've looked at the rivers, we've looked at the plains where agriculture is grown. There's really one more aspect of Europe that I want to tell you about, and that is the islands. We've looked at one when we talked about some of the uplands, okay, but one you need to know is Great Britain or the UK. Okay, that's the first of the big islands. There's a lot of smaller islands if we zoom down into the Mediterranean Sea. Okay, you can see those all right there. You're going to hear me talk about these a lot because, like I keep saying, it's the only place I've ever been that's cool outside of Iowa. And so I'll show you some pictures of those later. But we're going to look at right now some of the bigger islands in the north, okay, in the North Sea. We have the UK right here, okay, or Great Britain. That's one of our first big islands. Right off the coast of that is another one of our islands, and that's Ireland. Okay, one of the places I'm dying to go. I think it would be awesome. So that's two of our main islands. Another island we're going to look at is Iceland. Okay, so we have to go a little bit north to find Iceland. I'll get out the white marker to show you Iceland. Okay, this region right here. And if we go even further north, where we get even colder, we're going to see Greenland. The thing that confuses everyone. Why wouldn't you call Greenland Iceland and Iceland Greenland? I'm not going to go into that. But right here we have Greenland. So I have it with the green pen. So Greenland is probably more icy than Iceland, but we're going to circle it anyway. So those are our four main islands. You got Greenland, you got Iceland, you have Ireland. I'll do a different color here. Ireland, and you also have Great Britain and the UK. Our four main islands that we're going to talk about. We'll get into the smaller Mediterranean islands later on in this unit, but right now that's what I want you to understand. So make sure you have all this stuff labeled on your map. If you miss something, go back, and we will go further in depth into this stuff, start getting into the different types of geography as we go along, and I think it'll be a pretty cool unit.